Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
The sun cut across the ceiling when Clara woke up, a narrow beam that seemed to slice through time. Mark was still asleep beside her, on his back, breathing calmly, like nothing was wrong. But Clara knew it was. Last night's argument still burned inside her, like a fire you can't put out with water, only with distance. She'd tried talking to him before the trip, asking him to slow down, to start looking at her again, to remember they were a couple, not just two adults sharing an apartment and a last name. But he answered in that tired voice, that thin patience of someone carrying the weight of the world, "Clara, I'm doing this for us. The Atlanta project is important. If I deliver this right, I could get promoted, earn more, maybe even stop traveling so much." She didn't argue anymore. Not then. But when he left, suitcase by the door and a kiss on her forehead, she closed the door and felt the apartment collapse into silence. The first few days were routine. She went to work, answered emails, smiled at people, but inside, a restlessness grew. It wasn't just his absence. It was the lack of connection. It was feeling like, slowly, she'd become a quiet presence in her own life. Her job was stable, her marriage seemingly solid, but there was a void she couldn't fill. And with it came what she'd always tried to hide, the intense, overwhelming desire that had haunted her since youth. An impulse that didn't come just from the body, but from the need to feel real, wanted, seen. It was on the third day of his trip that the invitation arrived. A simple envelope, her name written by hand. Lena's wedding, her college friends, in rural New Jersey. She opened it carefully, read the words, smiled. It was an outdoor event, with lights strung through the trees and live music. A beautiful, intimate party with people she hadn't seen in years. That night, she called Mark. His voice on the other end of the line sounded distant, like it was coming from a place she could no longer reach. "Mark, did you see? Lena's wedding invitation came." "I saw it. It's next Saturday, right?" "Yeah." A pause. She waited. "Are you going?" he asked, without enthusiasm. "I think so." She was a close friend. "All right. Have fun. What about you? Won't you be back by then?" "No. The project's speeding up. I'll have to stay until Tuesday." Another pause. "Okay," she said, her voice lighter than she felt. "Take care of yourself, love." And he hung up. That simple, almost automatic reply weighed more than any argument. He didn't hesitate. Didn't suggest he'd try to come back. Didn't ask if she wanted company. It was as if he'd already accepted she'd go alone, as if it were normal, as if it always happened. Clara stayed holding her phone, staring at the blank screen. The next morning, she started getting ready. She picked a dark blue dress, tight, one that hugged her body like it was reminding the world she was still there. She spent hours getting ready, hair, makeup, perfume, not for vanity, but as a ritual of reclaiming herself. She wanted to remember who she was before she got lost in obligations. When she arrived at the party, she was greeted with hugs and laughter. Lena, stunning in white, ran up to her and pulled her into a tight hug. "You came. I was afraid you wouldn't." Clara smiled, but inside, she felt out of place. People danced, drank, laughed loudly, but she moved like she was watching it all from the outside. She grabbed a wine glass, tried to talk, but her attention was elsewhere. Until, in the middle of the dance floor, he appeared. Chase. She recognized him before he even turned around. That relaxed posture, the way he held his glass, that crooked smile that never reached his eyes. It was him. The man who'd taken up an entire chapter of her life, a relationship that started with fire and ended in ashes. He was intense, dominating, captivating. He made love like war and passion like a secret. She'd loved him with fear. He'd left her without explanation. He turned. Their eyes met. He smiled. She didn't look away. He approached slowly, like he was testing the ground. Clara. He said her name like he was tasting a flavor he'd never forgotten. They talked. About time, about what they'd done in the past years, about the past that still hung between them. He spoke in that raspy, low voice she remembered so well, the same one that whispered in the dark, that made her lose her footing, that made her do things she'd never do with anyone else. The music changed. A slow song with a strong beat filled the air. He held out his hand. Want to dance? She hesitated. 1 second. 2. She set her glass down and took his hand. They danced close, like time hadn't passed. He guided her firmly, hands on her back, his body pressed against hers. She felt the heat, the scent of tobacco and cologne, his breath on her neck. It was like nothing had changed. Like her body still belonged to him. The music surrounded them, but the world faded. The laughter, the lights, the people, all turned to shadows. There was only that slow movement, that touch, that closeness that felt written in their blood. He began to lead her off the dance floor, not letting go of her hands. She followed, not asking, not resisting. He took her to a hidden corner, behind one of the large trees circling the hall, where the hanging lights barely reached. The party sound still came through, but muffled, like it was from another world. There, he stopped. Turned to face her. His eyes shone with something more than desire, recognition. Memory. Danger. She tried to say something, but he placed a finger on her lips. Slowly. Calmly. Like he was recalling an old ritual. You still have that look, he murmured, his voice rough. Like you're about to run, but wanting to stay. She didn't answer. Couldn't. Then he leaned in. Slowly. So close she felt his skin's warmth on her face, his hot breath at the corner of her mouth. 1 second. 2. And he kissed her. It was an intense, urgent kiss, full of memories and unspoken promises. A kiss that didn't ask permission, that ignored the place, the people, the consequences. She kissed him back. For a moment, she forgot everything. Forgot her marriage, forgot Mark, forgot who she was in that instant. There was only touch, taste, desire that felt like it had been asleep for years. When it ended, she pulled away. Didn't say anything. Picked up her purse, didn't say goodbye to anyone, walked out without looking back. She went home, hands trembling, breath uneven. Locked the door, leaned against the hallway wall, and slid down to the floor. What had she done? But more than that, what did she feel? It wasn't regret. Not yet. It was excitement. And fear. Because deep down, she knew it hadn't been a mistake. It had been the beginning of something she wasn't sure she could control. Clara spent the night awake. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, phone beside her, as if waiting for a message that would never come. The kiss replayed in flashes, the pressure of his lips, his hand on her neck, the way her body responded before her mind could catch up. It wasn't just desire. It was reconnection. Recognition. It was like a part of her, buried for years, had suddenly woken up, screaming that it was still alive. In the days that followed, she tried to act normal. Went to work, answered emails, attended meetings. But she was distant. Distracted. Responded late, missed details, forgot appointments. Her coworkers noticed. Someone asked if she was okay. She smiled and said she was just tired. But it wasn't. It was guilt. Excitement. Fear. And above all, the memory of the kiss, looping like a movie she couldn't pause. On Tuesday night, her phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. It was good to see you. Even better to kiss you. She recognized it immediately. Chase. She froze. Stared at the screen like it might disappear. She should ignore it. Block it. Delete it. But her fingers moved on their own. That shouldn't have happened. He replied fast. Everything that happens between us always should have happened. She laughed, a short, nervous laugh. Closed her eyes. Opened them. Typed. I'm married, Chase. You're alone. That's different. The reply hit her like a punch. Because it was true. She felt alone. Not from lack of physical presence, but connection. Mark was far away, yes, but even when he was near, he seemed distant. And Chase. Chase looked at her like he saw her completely. Like he knew every hidden part of her. We need to talk. For real. Then talk to me. In person. They arranged dinner. A discreet restaurant downtown, far from the neighborhoods she'd visited with Mark. Clara chose a simple black dress, elegant. Put on red lipstick. Not to seduce. To remind herself who she was. When she arrived, he was already there. Sitting in a corner, a whiskey glass in hand, that same crooked smile, eyes locked on her the moment she walked in. He didn't stand. Just looked at her. Like he already knew she'd come. They sat. Talked. About time. About what they'd done in recent years. About the past. He spoke in that low, raspy voice that seemed to touch something inside her. Slowly, the tension eased. She laughed for real. Told things she hadn't even told Mark. And he listened. Didn't judge. Didn't pull away. Just absorbed it all. Midway through, he suggested. Let's get out of here. This place is full of cameras, people who might recognize you. We can go somewhere else. She hesitated. No. This is fine. He smiled. All right. But I need to use the bathroom. She stayed at the table, fiddling with her empty glass. 10 minutes passed. 20. She started thinking of leaving. Picked up her purse. Walked to the hallway leading to the back of the hall. Saw the men's bathroom door slightly open. She called softly. Chase. No answer. She pushed the door. The room was dark, only a faint light above the mirror. He was leaning against the wall, waiting. Before she could speak, he stepped closer. You came. And kissed her. This time, it wasn't a surprise. It was a choice. Deliberate. Deep. She didn't resist. Didn't think. Let her body take over. His hand slid down her back, pulling her close. She felt his body pressed against hers, the heat, the urgency. It was fast. Intense. Forbidden. Right there, between the cold bathroom walls, with the restaurant's noise in the background, they gave in. A moment that didn't last long but felt eternal. When it ended, she stepped back, straightened her dress, looked in the mirror. Saw her eyes, red, full of something she couldn't name. They left separately. He went first. She waited a few minutes, took a deep breath, walked out like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. In the days that followed, the messages continued. Meetings arranged. Cheap motels, rooms with heavy curtains, hard beds. 3 nights. 4 encounters. No promises. No future. Just the now. Just desire. Just what she felt she'd lost. Mark was still in Atlanta. She answered his calls with a calm voice, said everything was fine, work was going well, she missed him. Lied naturally. Like she was getting used to a double life. Then, on Friday night, he called. Clara, I managed to wrap things up early. I'll be back tomorrow morning. I want to surprise you." She felt the ground vanish. She looked at her phone. At Chase's messages. At the photos she hadn't sent but that lived in her memory. She had little time. She decided that before Mark returned, she needed to end it all. Once and for all. She sent a message to Chase. "I need to see you. One last time. At my place. Tonight." She didn't want to keep going like this. She wanted to close the chapter. She wanted to look him in the eyes and say it was over. Or maybe, deep down, she just wanted one last moment. One final instant of who she'd been. And who she still felt capable of being. The apartment was silent when Clara arrived. She turned on just one light in the hallway, leaving the rest of the space in dimness. The air felt heavier, like the space knew what was about to happen. She walked to the kitchen, grabbed a glass, filled it with water, and drank slowly. Her hands trembled. Not from fear. From anticipation. From awareness. She knew it was wrong, but she also knew she was already beyond right and wrong. She was in the territory of the inevitable. Chase arrived a short while later. He knocked lightly on the door, like he didn't want to wake anyone, as if there were still innocence in this. She opened it. He walked in without a word. Wearing a leather jacket, hair slightly messy, the same look she remembered from their 20s, like time hadn't passed. They stared at each other. No conversation. No excuses. No justifications. He stepped closer. She didn't back away. The kiss came fast, but not desperate. It was intentional. Like every touch was a choice. He pulled her toward the couch. Clothes came off slowly, like each second needed to be felt. She closed her eyes. Let her body act. Let her mind go blank. It was intense. Different. Slower than their previous encounters, like he wanted to memorize every movement, every breath. When it ended, he lay beside her, staring at the ceiling, silent. "Are you going to leave him?" he finally asked. Clara didn't answer right away. She sat up, pulled on her robe. "This isn't about being with you, Chase. It's about knowing who I am." He chuckled softly. "You know who you are. You just can't live with it." She didn't argue. Maybe he was right. He got up, started dressing. "I don't want a relationship, Clara. You know that." "I know." "Then why are we here?" "Because I needed this." "And now?" "Now it ends." He looked at her. Not with anger. With pity. Or maybe understanding. Be careful what you destroy. Sometimes, what's left isn't what you wanted to build. And he left. Clara stayed alone. Locked the door. Went to the bedroom. Took a hot shower. Changed the sheets. Cleaned the apartment like she could erase what happened just by tidying up. At 2 a.m, she lay in bed but couldn't sleep. She stared at the empty side where Mark should be. Thought about what she'd say when he returned. How she'd fake normalcy. How she'd hide the weight of the past days. The next morning, she woke to a noise. Footsteps. In the living room. She froze. Mark wasn't supposed to arrive this early. She got up slowly, wrapped in her robe, and stepped out of the bedroom. He was there. Mark. Standing in the middle of the room, a suitcase beside him, face calm but eyes cold. He didn't smile. Didn't greet her. He pulled a folder from his coat. Placed it on the coffee table. "I saw everything, Clara." She felt the floor give way. What? The wedding. The restaurant. The motels. The house. Last night. She stepped back. How? He opened the folder. Photos. Videos. Images of her and Chase in the car, entering hotels, kissing on the dance floor, leaving the restaurant bathroom. Even a shot of her in a robe, opening the door for him the night before. I hired a private investigator after you went to the wedding. You changed. You got distant. Answered messages late. When I called, you seemed absent. It wasn't suspicion. It was fear. Fear of losing you. She looked at the photos. Felt nausea. Shame. Mark, Don't say anything. I've heard enough. He pulled out a sealed envelope. The lawyers will be in touch. The divorce will be quick. You have until tomorrow to move out. You've already decided everything? I decided the moment I saw the bathroom video. Her chest tightened. And what will you tell people? Nothing. This isn't about revenge. It's about dignity. He went to the bedroom. Came back with a suitcase. I still loved you, he said, his voice cracking for the first time. But I can't live with what you did. And he left. Clara stood in the middle of the room, staring at the photos scattered on the table. At his suitcase. At the closed door. The apartment, once a home, was now just an empty space. And for the first time, she truly understood the depth of what she'd lost. Clara spent the night on the living room floor, photos spread around her, like she was sitting in the middle of the wreckage of what used to be her life. She didn't cry. Didn't scream. She stayed still, staring at the images like they belonged to someone else. Her face, full of desire. The smile after the kiss. Her hands intertwined with Chase's. All captured with a coldness that hurt more than any accusation. Mark didn't need to yell. The evidence spoke for him. And it spoke loudly. The next morning, Samantha arrived. Her younger sister, eyes red, voice shaky but firm. She carried a large suitcase. Let's go, she said. Clara didn't resist. She took only a few clothes, documents, the wedding photo album, which she left on the bed. Didn't look back. Left the apartment with her head down, like the weight of what she'd done was visible to everyone passing by. They went to a small Brooklyn apartment where Samantha lived with her boyfriend, a history teacher named Daniel. The space was tight but clean. Clara took the living room sofa. Days passed. She barely spoke. Ate little. Spent hours lying down, staring at the ceiling, reliving every choice, every kiss, every lie. On the fourth day, her phone rang. Unknown number. It was her mother. How could you? Her voice was broken, but cold. Your father cried. He cried like a child. He preached on Sunday about sin, about falling, about daughters who forget who they are. And everyone knew it was about you. Clara didn't respond. I don't want to see you. I don't want to talk to you. Never again. The call ended. Clara spent the following days in heavy silence. Samantha's apartment was welcoming, but she felt like an unwanted guest, someone occupying space without belonging. She didn't call work. Didn't answer emails. Just existed, between the sofa and the guest room, mind spinning without stop. The image of Mark walking out with his suitcase wouldn't leave her. The way he looked at her, not with hate, not with anger, just sadness, was worse than any shout. But work went on. There was no public scandal. Nothing leaked. The photos, videos, evidence, all locked in the investigator's files, the lawyer's documents, Mark's decisions. The outside world didn't know. The office carried on as usual. Meetings, deadlines, projects. Only she knew nothing was normal anymore. It was during this time that Chase reappeared. Not by text. Not by phone. He showed up in front of Samantha's building, holding a coffee, that familiar smile on his face. "I heard what happened," he said. "I'm sorry." She didn't respond. Stood on the sidewalk, staring at him like she was trying to figure out if he was real. "You disappeared," she finally said. "I panicked. When I found out you'd separated, it hit hard. I didn't want this." She wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe he felt something too. That it wasn't just sex. That somehow, all this chaos had meaning. They started seeing each other. Slowly. Discreet meetings. Coffee. Long talks. He said he'd changed. That time apart made him rethink everything. That he wanted to try something serious. He said the words she wanted to hear: commitment, future, respect. And for the first time in weeks, she felt like she wasn't completely alone. She agreed to go out with him. Then agreed to go to his apartment. Then agreed to move back to the city, rent a small studio, return to work. Everything seemed possible. For a few months, she was almost happy. He introduced her as his girlfriend. Sent messages during the day. Called her love in public. Clara began to believe that maybe this could turn into something real. That the mistake with Mark, as serious as it was, might have led to something genuine. Until that night. When she arrived, the door was slightly open. Low light. Smell of wine. Soft music. There was a woman on the sofa. Young. In just a bra and panties. Laughing, phone in hand, watching a video. Chase was behind her, shirtless, arms wrapped around her waist. Neither noticed Clara come in. She saw it all. Saw the way he kissed the woman's neck. Saw the 2 drinks on the table. Saw the open suitcase by the door, with women's clothes scattered around. She stood still. Silent. Until he turned. His face changed. Surprise. Guilt. Fear. Clara. She didn't say anything. Didn't yell. Didn't cry. Turned and walked out. This time, she didn't look back. The next week, she returned to work. Sat at her desk like nothing had happened. Answered emails. Presented the new project. Smiled when someone asked how she was. But at night, alone, she sat on the floor, phone in her lap, and opened an old photo. Her and Mark, on their first wedding anniversary. Laughing, champagne glasses in hand, at the restaurant where they'd met. That's when she cried. Not for Chase. Not for herself. For Mark. For who he was. For who she'd stopped being. And she truly understood, for the first time. The mistake wasn't wanting another man. The mistake was thinking the emptiness she felt could be filled by someone other than herself. That the desire wasn't for Chase. It was for attention. For validation. For feeling like she still existed. And that destroying an entire life for a moment of recognition would never, ever be worth it. Years later, in a therapy session, she simply said, "I didn't want a new love. I wanted to feel loved. And I confused the two." Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.